Boricua.
What was that like with Johnny Carson? Nothing, I imagine, can compare to the primordial nature of television back in the 1970s and early 80s when that was it. If you were on Johnny Carson, something like 80 to 90% of America was watching you in that very moment. That must have been a hell of a trip, dude.
I mean, I was in Las Vegas and Johnny Carson was going to retire. And in the summer of 91, the USA Today in the Life section had a comedian named Ron Schock, and he was going to be one of the last 6 comedians to be on The Tonight Show before Johnny leaves in 11 months. So I started to think, man, that's like Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. There's 5 tickets out there, and who's going to be the 5? And I'm thinking, well, it's not going to be me. You know what, man? It was me. I got one of the 6 spots.
God damn.
Man.
I'm Rick Sanchez, and this is the Rick Sanchez podcast. And boy, we've got a real treat for you. We talk a lot about something on this show that makes us very unique as Latinos. And you know what it is? Man, we are so friggin' resilient. There's something about the spirit of being a Latino in the United States. I mean, everybody knows we work 42 hours a week. The average non-Latino works 33 hours a week. We hire more people. We start more jobs. But the one thing we do, I think, the one thing we do as Latinos in America that makes us different is we just don't give a crap, man. You knock us down, we're going to get back up. You knock us down, you fire me, I'll get another job. I don't care. It's fine. We're like the frickin' Energizer Bunny, right? That's kind of who we are. It's who I am. I mean, how many times have I failed? I've told you all everything I've learned in my life is because I've gotten knocked down, right? And we start that way. And there's one guy, right? When you think of Latinos in America, there's one guy in particular who always comes to mind. And this is a guy who never had it easy, right? And part of the reason he never stops, he's always going, he's always winning, is because life's never been easy for this guy, right? It didn't start easy, and from time to time it hasn't been easy, but he's always, está ahí, you know? Está aquí, as we say, está arriba. And I'm proud to know him. And I'm proud to say that, representa, right? He represents. George Lopez is good enough to join us now. How about that, huh?
That's quite an introduction.
How come nobody claps for me?
Yeah. I never thought it was going to be me, which I think is maybe one of the essential tools you need to be successful is you can't think it's going to be you because the odds are so stacked against you that thinking it would be you would be seeing a result before you've created a result. So I never thought it was me. And then I was going to go and see if it could be me. But my grandfather was not my biological grandfather. But he told me that I was lazy, that I was going to grow up to be lazy. And I think that could have been negative reinforcement or negative, but that doesn't work with kids these days. And it worked with me back then only because life was so simple. He was one of the few adults I ever saw in my life. So I had to listen to what he was saying. He was saying right in front of me. And I would just say, we'll see. We'll see.
My mother worked in a factory, and your grandmother who raised you worked in a factory. And it's funny because those of us who even know that word, it means so much to us. You're poor when your parents worked in a factory. I don't know a non-Latino or a white kid who has ever said to me, when I've said to them, oh, what did your parents do? They've said, oh, my mom worked in a factory. Even just the word factory has a very special meaning to guys like you and me, doesn't it?
I've never heard anybody say it like that, but yes, and everybody was looking for out here in Van Nuys, California, the General Motors job, the Lockheed job, Northrop, Aerospace, JPL. And they all had, it was nepotistic, they got in.
Yeah.
But I never wanted to do that in my heart or soul. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew that I didn't want to do that put an ashtray in a Camaro for 40 years.
And by the way, let me say something. That's a job at the plant. You would say, oh, my mom or my grandmom or my dad, he worked at the Ford plant. My dad worked for Chevrolet. My dad worked for Ford. When you say my mom worked at a factory, you know what that means? That means they worked in a place where you don't even know what the hell the product was. They were, in my case, my mom sewed shoes from some company that nobody ever heard of called Suave or Siboney. But it's not like a job at the plant. It's not like it came with great benefits, you know this. So it's a job, man. It's just a job, right?
You know, it's when you're saying that, whenever I used to go to town with my grandmother or grandfather, and I saw some kids that I may have known from school, I would duck down so they wouldn't see me with them. But in reality, I should have stood up. I just realized that I used to duck down not to be seen with them. They didn't know them. I knew them, and I didn't want to be seen with them. But they weren't bad people. They were deficient in what areas all people of that age, of that time, would have been deficient in. Caring about other people. Yeah. They didn't have any sympathy for anybody. Everything was like, all right, get up. Come on. We got to go. And there was nothing that ever you could was any urgency to make sure, are you okay? Are you all right? If somebody were to do that, they would say, yeah, you know, he's all right. Thank you. He doesn't need anything.
George, you grew up with your grandmother, really, your mom's mother, maternal grandmother,
yeah,
and your grandfather somewhat, although you describe him as not a really nice guy, kind of mean, right? What happened to your parents?
My mother, in San Fernando, California, my mother was always somebody who, first of all, she wasn't entirely mentally well, and she would just kind of go out and, you know, come back with a guy, and, you know, come back with a TV, come back with a new refrigerator. I mean, I don't know how she did it. I mean, she didn't write, and I tried to teach her to read when I was in fourth grade, and I couldn't do it. You can't teach an adult to read in fourth grade. And one of the things that was very painful to me to see was that they would have an open house, and she would come to the open house, and you'd have to sign in. And I would be like, no, you know, she's okay. And then she would make an X. That's when an X was an approved signature. She would make an X.
Wow.
That just lays on you, man. Like, oh my God. You know, I wasn't a straight A student, so there wasn't any clamoring to see what my work was going to reveal about me, you know, and that was just so internally destructive to me that those may have been the seeds that were planted to find those nuances that made us who we were, but also that you could share with other people. So they knew that if they saw the same thing, like you said, we're resilient.
Yeah. When I went to NBC to work after I was working in local, and I knew that I grew up like you, and my parents don't speak a lick of English. My dad only has a fourth grade education. He barely knows how to read and write, except for what he taught himself. And suddenly I found myself there. I don't know if this happened with you. When you're Latino and you grow up really poor and you look around your surroundings and you don't think you mix in with the big other kids. I go to NBC, my first gig up there, and I'm surrounded by all these people. They're all Ivy League school guys. Their parents are kind of famous. They've got lawyers. They got PR people. And a lot of them, you know, you're interviewing today the Secretary of State. He's coming in from the White House, and you're sitting next to Tom Brokaw. You're sitting next to all these famous people I've seen on TV, and I'm feeling. We have this word in Spanish. It's coaccionado, right? It means like I'm kind of embarrassed. Do I belong here? What am I going to do when I'm going to have to fight through this crap? And then somehow along the way, I don't know how, George. I don't know how, but I think I finally figured out that because I didn't have all those things, I had always had to work a little harder, and I came at it a little differently, and I had two cultures, and in the end, I had stuff those guys didn't have. But in the process, man, it's hard to figure that crap out, or at least it was for me. I don't know what it was like for you.
Well, I mean, one of the things that drew me to you and your style was that como no tienes pelos en la lengua, you know, you don't hold anything back in a space where everything is held back. You had very honest opinions, and you stuck by your opinions. which is something that not a lot of people do. They speak one on their opinions one day, then the next day, hey, listen, I'm sorry I said that. I don't know what I was thinking. You have to, the times that I've been doing stand-up, and I was always afraid of what people might think or if anybody would get upset. And I think I was that way because those thoughts weren't mine. But now that they're mine, I don't apologize because comedy's indefensible. You know, there's some things in comedy that you don't do, just like a police would never relinquish his gun. It's just like there's things that you're not supposed to do. And in comedy, you're not supposed to apologize for comedy.
It says in your biography that you were inspired by Freddie Prinze. Those of us old enough to remember know that Freddie Prinze was kind of in many ways, one of the most talented human beings we've ever seen performing, and also one of the most tortured people we knew. What was it? What was it that inspired you about Freddie Prinze?
Well, you know, I believe that in the summer of 73, 74, when the TV guide would come out with a fall schedule, and that show was in a Chico on the Man. And then during the summer of 73, and they started to run promos of Chico on the Man. I think he was Hungarian, Puerto Rican, playing a Chicano. I wasn't into that whole thing about, hey, only a Chicano could play a Chicano. But his magnetism, his personality, I didn't know underneath that the way that a manager that we both shared said that he had a man's body, but a child's mind. He was very 6'2" and looked very confident on the outside, but was a lost boy inside and on drugs from back in New York. So, you know, you come out here and you're a sensation and you don't know what's happening. It's all happening so fast that, you know, everything he did was not the correct thing for him to do. And then back then, I don't even think they had the Betty Ford Center. You know, they would fire you. If you used drugs, they would fire you and then you would just disappear. But he wasn't around that long, but he made quite an impression on me because that was the first time that I ever really saw somebody that I would consider love at first sight.
You mean because you identified with his character, because you identified with his background, or because you just...
identified with the look, identified with the idea that he was a stand-up doing a television show, which I never equated, you know, and then, you know, years later when in 2001 or 2, when I first started to do interviews, and they would say, well, who are your comedy idols? And I would say Freddie Prinze. And it was a new conversation because he'd been away for so long. And when I was 17, I stole his headstone from Forest Lawn, you know, as if taking it was going to give me.
Did you really? You really stole his headstone?
Yeah. Yeah. It was already loose, but yeah.
What the hell did you do with it?
I kept it between my mattresses for years so that I don't even know what I thought was going to penetrate through the mattresses, but which I'm not proud of. But it just goes to, I mean, it's proof. It's a footprint to the time that I would say I was obsessed. But when they came to me about the Hollywood Star and me, the 100th episode, I told them that I wasn't going to go in until Freddie Prinze went in, and nobody ever petitioned Freddie Prinze to be in. And then Johnny Grant, at that time, rest his soul, said, well, we'll look and see. And then he was not in. And then I paid for him to be in. And his family, I knew, was Kathy Prinze, a wife, and Freddie Jr. And so what I did later brought them all together on Hollywood Boulevard, friends from New York. And it was quite a celebration for Freddie and Freddie Jr. Very emotional.
What was it like the first time you did stand-up?
In 79, wow. We asked a wino to buy us some wine at like a Bristol Farms on Westwood Boulevard, and we pushed it. It was a cork. We pushed the cork down with a pen, and me and my buddy Ernie were drinking. He didn't even go on stage. I don't know what he was drinking.
This isn't going to end well, but keep going.
If it was going to null the pain, but it was all, you know, Rick, it was all frightening, man. I mean, I was scared of everything already, and that would have had to have been the most terrifying thing that I was ever going to do.
Yeah.
And when you look back, it's like, what would make you go back? And I don't have the answer to that.
But you obviously figured it out. I mean, you've become, to this day, one of the most sought after comics in the United States. in both the little screen, the big screen, the live screen, everything, man. I mean,
I had a baseball coach that told me that when things got tough, I quit, and that quitters in life don't go anywhere, don't do anything. He goes, come back in 10 years and let me know how you're doing. I bet you I can tell you right now, you're not doing a damn thing. And
he said that.
we were my baseball coach in high school. We were nose to nose, and we were going at it. And I turned around, and my friends were just like, wow. And I started to play golf maybe a year or two out of high school, and it was very difficult to learn.
Yeah.
And when it got difficult to learn, I would quit, pick up the ball, and tell those guys, hey, I'm only going to play 9 holes. I'm going to take off. I forgot I had something to do. But I was lying to them, and I was lying to myself. And then on the way home one day, it's almost like his head appeared behind me, and he said, when things get tough, you pack it in. And I pulled over to the side of the road. I kind of evaluated my life at that point, which wasn't a lot to do. And then I figured out he was right. And I went to the school. I hadn't been there maybe in 4 or 5 years. And I went to the school, and I was walking across this field, and he was kind of looking like, who is that? And he says, is that my third baseman? I said, hey, coach, how you doing? What brings you here? And I told him that I had to come and apologize to him, because if I didn't, I don't think I could have lived my life peacefully without taking the responsibility of making his life harder. And then what he said to me was right. And it's the first time in my life I ever apologized to somebody. I would just disappear and not talk to the person anymore.
Fascinating. Are you still scared when you perform?
No, not at all. I may get tired, but I'm not scared. And I've been transcribing my shows like a dictation for the last 20 years. So I have all these shows that I've done, and there's stacks of them, and the DVDs are put away. And it's a great tool to look back, almost like if a paralegal was going to go and look up some case, I could go back and look up what I did in 2005, and then keep track of everything new and move everything old out. And I think I'm not afraid. I'm always very well prepared, which I wasn't. I'm opposite of what I used to be, not prepared. And I look back on those things either on the plane or during the day of shows, and it keeps me kind of in that cut right there.
Everybody says that you were discovered by Sandra Lopez and her, Sandra Bullock and her production team. I mean, that's the palaver, el cuento, as we say out there. How much of that is true, or how much of that is nuanced?
Let's see. That's a good question. I didn't know her from anybody.
Yeah.
And Dave Chappelle had been at this club in Austin, and Sandra lived in Austin. And the manager comes after the first show, and he goes, hey, man, guess who's coming? Sandra Bullock. And I was a little sloppy. I was drinking. I wasn't very professional. The material I wasn't, fond of. Just kind of going through a dead end thing in the late 90s. And then I actually got on my knees, and I prayed for her not to show up. Please. I didn't know her. I didn't know what she was going to think of me, but I prayed that she would not come to the show. And before the start of the second show, the guy peeks his head, and hey, she called, she's not coming. And I was embarrassed of what I was doing, but also less than 2 years later, she saw me out here, and I was so impressive because I kind of was changing the way I approached comedy at that time, because I was just on a dead end place. I'm like, I got to get out of this. And I was more prepared. And she came to see me, sat in the middle. And when she came backstage, she said, your life is like a train wreck that you can't turn away from. And let's come to my office and let's talk. And let's see what else we could find in there that's a train wreck. I said, yeah, all right. Train wreck.
But wait a minute. Your show that she, I guess, had a hand in at least highlighting or having it come to fruition, you played a dad, a regular guy, a very likable, normal. Other than the fact that you were funny and you were like every other dad, like I am, like my dad was with me, which made you very relatable. There was no train wreck there. So how did you go from that perceived train wreck guy to the really cool Latino dad on TV, probably the most famous Latino dad ever, with the possible exception of maybe Desi Arnaz?
Yeah, I went through and here's another thing that people where I come from, I was hitting golf balls over here. My manager calls me. He's like, "Are you on your way?" I'm like, "Man, I'm not going." "What do you mean you're not going?"
What?
"What's she going to do for me?" Goes, "Hey, they called. At 1:00, they'll be waiting for you. Why would you not go?" I said, "What is she going to do? What is she going to do for me?
Wow.
What has anybody ever done for me?"
Oh my
He's
God.
He's like, "You better go. You better go." And again, I would just say, "I'm not going." And I went. We spent 3 hours talking, laughing, and we just kind of attached it to the fact that I used to work with my grandmother in a factory. And then I was married and I had one kid, and then we created the boy and a girl. And then the mom character was my grandmother, and my best friend Ernie was really my best friend Ernie. And Angie was Anne, and Carmen was Chicha's daughter named Carmen, and Max was my grandmother's poodle, Max. And we just attached it to the things that were family oriented and workplace oriented. And then from there, we started to unravel the relationship between myself and my mother and myself and my wife. And I describe the show this way. Trying to prove to his mom he's not a boy, and trying to prove to his wife he's a man. And
wow.
It worked.
Yeah. I can't believe what you just said, though, that you had this opportunity to sit with them, that they were courting you, and there was something inside you that said, no, I don't want to go. Were you really saying, I don't deserve this? Is that what you were saying?
I think I was afraid of anything.
Yeah.
I think I was afraid of, I didn't have any adult male figures or anybody in my biological family that would have given me any information or advice that would have helped me growing up. And it was very, very primitive, man. I think Jodie Foster did a movie with Nell. I think she was raised by wolves. And I don't know, Rick, man, I can't tell you what it is, but I think the main thing is that if you quit, you're out. And if you don't quit, you're in. And no matter how far in you are, it's like all of the things that you were told, and then has to be, like I used to go down Barham and pay the rent late, and I would drive by Warner Brothers, and I would think to myself, what do you have to do to get in there? And that's why I did my show. So in a sense of manifest destiny,
mm-hmm.
Manifesting destiny is always good, because you never know. I mean, I manifested destiny without even being aware of what manifest destiny was. I just had these things in my head, and if I put it out there, I'd get it done. And I didn't realize that till a friend told me that maybe 15 years ago.
One of the cool things about you is that you've been very, very consistent throughout your career. I think, obviously you've had jobs, lost jobs, just like every other human being in this planet, but you've been very, very consistent. Is that something about your habitual sense? Is it something about your sense of organization? How have you maintained that level where most people in our profession, even more in your profession, because you're more on the entertainment side and I'm more on the news side, have a tough time with that? Somewhere along the line, they just get dogged somehow.
I was never really connected to anything human. I was more connected to things that were inanimate. Guitars, golf clubs, but humans, no. I never saw a healthy relationship growing up. And then I started doing stand-up at 18 and started traveling at 23, 24. I'm 61. Been traveling. It's an I picked the things you can do by yourself. You can play guitar by yourself. You can golf by yourself. And stand-up, you're the only one on stage. So in all of these years that have passed, and in a vacuum, I would say the thing that has benefited me the most was the fact that I didn't connect to anything or anybody. So I didn't have I didn't let leaving your family to go on the road affect me. When I was standing behind the curtain in 91, when I did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and then 31 years later, a month ago in New York with Jimmy Fallon, while they were coming back from commercial, I said, man, I stood behind this curtain 31 years ago. Did I believe 31 years ago that I was going to be standing back here 31 years later? I would have said no. I would have said no.
What was that like with Johnny Carson? Because even today, going on Fallon and going on some of these other shows is big, but nothing, I imagine, can compare to the primordial nature of television back in the 1970s and early 80s when that was it. If you were on Johnny Carson, something like 80 to 90% of America was watching you in that very moment. That must have been a hell of a trip, dude.
I mean, I was in Las Vegas and Johnny Carson was going to retire. And in the summer of 91, the USA Today in the Life section had a comedian named Ron Schock, and he was going to be one of the last 6 comedians to be on The Tonight Show before Johnny leaves in 11 months. So I started to think, man, that's like Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory. There's 5 tickets out there, and who's going to be the 5? I was in a hotel in Vegas at the Maxim in a Playboy Girls of Rock and Roll review show, and I'm thinking, well, it's not going to be me. I'm over here in the Playboy Girls of Rock and Roll. I'm so far from being ready. And you know what, man? It was me. I got one of the 6 spots.
God damn.
Man. I can't believe it. I mean, I still, even saying it to you, I still don't believe it.
Johnny frickin' Carson, man. That's like the Super Bowl.
And you know, and about 2 months ago, a jeweler came to my wardrobe person and said, hey, I got this kind of strange request. You know, Jonas, this guy, this jeweler to the stars, got a presidential Rolex, and the Rolex used to be owned by Johnny Carson. I'm like, what? I remember Johnny Carson having a Rolex, and it's shining on The Tonight Show. And I'm like, well, how did he get it? Oh, you know, his widow gave it to a guy she was dating. They didn't end up getting married, and he still held it. And he hadn't worn it in 10 years, and he was going to sell it, and it had all the documentation. And he wanted to know, the jeweler said, I think I know the perfect couple guys for this. Went to me first, and then he said, if you don't like it, don't feel any pressure to buy it. And then Dick Wolf was the guy who wanted to buy it. Dick Wolf wanted to look at it. And I, when the minute I held that watch in my hand, it just kind of like this thrust of like light went through me, like just through me. And holding it. And outside of my building at NBC, where my dressing room is, the Johnny Carson building, and NBC's right there. And I bought it.
Oh, wow.
And he was wearing it the night that I did The Tonight Show in 91 when he came down the hall and he and I shook hands.
What was that like, by the way, doing the show? Did you pinch yourself a little bit?
I got seen by the talent scout at the Improv. And he said, oh, I like you. You know, very dismissive. You know, I like you. Why don't you put some stuff together and give me a call in a week, 10 days and see where you are. So then I worked on it all day for 7 days. I call him up. I go to Burbank to his office where you can see Der Wiener Schnitzel from outside of the NBC office. And he was at his desk in his chair, and I was in front of him, and he said, okay, let's see what you got. No audience, nothing. I told jokes to one guy, and he just went, a couple of times. And he said, all right, move this here, move that there, and move that there, and give me a call in a week and 10 days. So that I had been working on it, but then I was at the Improv, and I was just going to work it out. And he walked in, and he saw me, and he said, hey, are you going to do the stuff for the show? I'll look at you right now. And I wasn't planning on seeing him, but I was going to do stuff for the show. And I did it. And when I walked out, he shook my hand and said, congratulations, you got The Tonight Show.
Wow. What a story. You mentioned a little while ago that one of the reasons you've been very successful and very driven is because you've never really, I don't know what word or what verb to use here, but maybe you've never given yourself the luxury or allowed yourself to tie yourself to any one person or any one human being. And, you know, in life we have children, I have children, you have children, you know, wives, loved ones. I too have always felt like I was just driven to get to the next thing, and nothing would get in the way with that, in the way of that, which is why I guess I ended up interviewing 4 or 5 presidents and working at NBC and working at CNN and working at Fox and doing all that shit. And part of it was because that actually became more important than anything. Not that I don't love my wife and I don't love my kids, because I really do, but I almost relate a little bit to that sense of drivenness that you just described. Can you put it into your words for us?
I would say, man, I think I've said, and I don't want it to seem. I wanted to be somebody in a place where everybody was nobody. Not that they weren't not that they weren't important, but they just got up every day and went to the same place, and I didn't want that. And I didn't settle, or did I not want to settle like these guys have settled, and I just thought that I was different, not better, but I just felt inside that I was different.
Yeah, I know. And I guess what you're trying to say is you don't want to come across as callous, because I don't think you are. And I know the people who love you and you love them back. But
everybody there made their life decisions so early, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to make a decision that I would be working in this place for 30 years when I was 19. And stand up, I didn't know if I was going to be any good at it, but I just felt like that was like young Chicanos use boxing or Latinos use boxing. I just thought, I didn't even know how far I was going to get. I just felt like I couldn't live the life of a 9-to-5 guy. I already done that. I didn't like it.
You just said Chicano instead of Latino, and I totally relate to that, because I think there's something in the spirit of, Los Angelinos, somebody who is from Los Angeles and is Latino, who has, it doesn't mean that you can't identify with a Cuban or a Cuban from Miami or a Puerto Rican from New York or a Hondureño from, Chicago. But there's something in the spirit of being a Mexican-American from LA, which is a little different. And there's nothing wrong with that, no different than being a redneck dude from Tuscaloosa. It's just, there's a part of the regionality of who you are.
I think people that come from New York sound like they're from New York.
Yeah.
And people that come from LA look like they come from LA. And, the whole Chicano, in the 70s, we were Chicanos in the 70s, and they had brown berets, and they had all these brothers, and had these car clubs. And then in the late 70s and 80s, then the paisas from Mexico and El Salvador and Guatemala was coming to Los Angeles, and they were the ones that would, be dressed from the waist down, no shirt, but boots and slacks. And they'd be working on their car with a lamp outside, and they'd got to be holding a lamp. And somebody said, how would you describe a Chicano versus a non-Chicano? And I would say, when you play basketball and they have the shirts and the skins are from Mexico and the shirts are from the United States, because I'm never taking my shirt off to work on a car outside. They had no qualms.
Me neither. The same with these guys. Have you ever been with a bunch of guys? I remember when we were growing up, we'd play baseball or we'd play basketball, mostly basketball, and you'd play shirts versus skins. And like, no, I'm not taking off my shirt to play basketball with you. I mean, I'm just not. It's just not my gig. I mean, I don't do that. So,
I started to let the shower steam up, so when I got out, I wouldn't have to look at myself.
It's like
it's just like a blur going by,
Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, imagine that the George Lopez Show would be the sensation that it became?
No, I would say no. Wow. And there was a big decision that had to be made because, it was after 9/11. We premiered in 2002. After 9/11, all the comedies at every network went down. Like, they didn't have a chance. Everybody was watching news and or watching Datelines and all the 2020s and Nightlines. And those went away. And then we had sold the pilot in like November, December. No, in May. So we were writing the pilot August, September, October, November, started to read actors in December. And then in the middle of January, or late January of 2002, there had to be a decision made. We're all at Warner Brothers. Sandra was there, Bruce Helford, and all the presidents and people in casting at Warner Brothers. And they said, well, what do you want to do? You want to wait till September, or do you want to try to go into the mid-season, And nobody had an answer. And then Sandra said, well, let's ask George. What do you think? And I said, wow. And I was always a person like, let's go now and find out. Better to find out I think my grandmother would say that. Better to find out now than to find out later.
Yeah, right.
So I decided to go at the mid-season, and I think it was maybe the toughest decision that I had to make in my life at that time. And then also, I think it was the right decision to make. And we had to retain 85% of the lead-in, and we retained 93.
Wow. Pretty close.
Pretty close. That was kind of a small window, not to lose 15% of your lead in. That's very tough.
But the show, how long was the show in the air? I know
the show we did 120 episodes. So we started in the end of March in 2002, and then we ended in May in 2007.
And you still get something from that?
Oh yeah,
nice. Huh?
Yeah, I'm a creator, so I have points in the show. So they've been buying it every 4 years. I mean, it hasn't been off the air in 20 years, but it's been in syndication since 2007, and I think in 4-year blocks, and they just have kept buying it over and over again.
Why? What was it about the show, or maybe about you, that made America fall in love with that show when it was some weird Latino dude from frickin' LA, which is nothing like Leave It to Beaver or, any of those other shows that we grew up with?
I think, what would you say it was?
Was that Momo?
Yeah. I think the structure of the family was familiar. And then, we were coming off of shows like Full House and Growing Pains and Silver Spoons. And those were all very safe. And then, I would say that they end, like that. And I would say, well, we don't want to do that. We want to be a little bit, thank God Roseanne had been kind of led the way. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves Raymond. So we wanted to be a dysfunctional, but not actually, and not wear our color on our sleeve. Like that show was right down the road and very diverse. Like, these guys, I would say, they would say, we're going to have a bad babysitter in an episode and we're going to cast Latinas. I said, no. We're going to cast everybody for different parts, and we're not going to make a babysitter bad, or we're not going to make a couple that need marriage counseling Latinos. They were Asian, and the other girl was a white girl babysitter. Like I just decided to tell those guys to make it everybody else, and we were the family in the house, and we did some really great things. But also, those characters were great, but also the writing was very good and above average writers. And I think at the end of the day, I think the writing and the genuine love that looked like was there between us was still very close, after 20 years, that those things were a perfect match.
But you never looked like you were acting. You looked like you were just being George Lopez. Lopez. There's a show. How did you pull that off, given that, because to look like you're not acting, you have to be acting. And to be able to pull that off, you're supposed to go to some school in New York where very wealthy people go to learn how to do that, Juilliard or some crap like that. I don't imagine that you went to Juilliard.
No.
Boy, what a surprise. I'm right.
I didn't go to the high school of performing arts in New York, LaGuardia High School. You know what I did realize? I realized I wasn't, there's some guys that you can talk to them forever. They're going to tell you that they're the greatest and they don't need this and they don't need that because they know it already.
Yeah.
I wasn't like that. I read with an actor in the middle of December, right before Christmas break, and he was an actor and I wasn't an actor. It was the guy Valente who got the part of my best friend. And I was so bad. And I remember, like a kid at a Little League game, you miss the ball, you look at your parents, and I looked at Bruce and Robert, and the look on their faces were like, no, it's all right. You don't have to read. But I knew that they saw in me, because I saw in their faces, they're like, can this fucking dude even act? What? We're right down the road. Has anybody ever asked you if you can act? No, right. Sir. And after that day, I got back to my house. I called my manager and I said, hey, man, you got to find me an acting coach today.
Wow.
And I had this woman, Warner Laughlin, who I had her for 102 shows. I hired her, and then the show paid her, but she was with me all those years. And she's the person that got me to be able to look like I wasn't acting.
Yeah. Boy, I'll tell you, that's such an important lesson. We talk about that a lot. The idea that if you have to stand back sometimes in your life and look at your life like a mural that you're painting, and you can see in one corner, oh my God, it's missing some blue over there. Or there's not enough paint on this side. Like if you same as a garden, you bought 13 plants, but there's 17 feet. You're missing 4 feet of plants. And life is like that. Every once in a while, we got to stand back and go, oh shit, I forgot the acting lessons. I better go buy some. Or
I mean, there was no way that if I hadn't seen it or even known to have felt it, that show wasn't going to survive.
God,
with me not taking acting lessons or having my coach with me every day.
That's how close that show came to being a disaster instead of the incredible hit it was. So you're about to unveil or are unveiling now something really cool and new. It's everywhere. I don't know. I can't turn on the TV or see. Tell me about it.
It's been on since November 4th, called Lopez versus Lopez with my daughter, Mayan Lopez.
Great.
Who like me, when she was 12, she wanted to be on Saturday Night Live and she wanted to go to Second City, which she did. And Mayan's great. I mean, Mayan, has learned something that's not easy to learn in a short amount of time. And she's great on the show. And then all of a sudden there's a renewed interest in me because of her. Opportunities that are presenting themselves where they go to her and not necessarily me. And I like that. The idea, did I ever think that I would be doing a show with Mayan? Never. Could I have written it myself? No. And it came from a TikTok where a guy had made a TikTok about, me getting a kidney for my wife and then getting divorced. And, and Mayan took obsession to that, talking about her mom, and she twerked upside down and had a bag of money in her hand and all this shit that doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything to me. And it really kind of just putting everything out there. And I was like, and it was much more than I would have put out there, but I can't tell Mayan what to put out there. So Debbie Wolf saw the TikTok, started following Mayan, started to see these things, daddy issues and things like that. And she had her own issues with her own father. And she was working on the Connors where Bruce Helford runs the Connors. He did my show, and she said to him, I got an idea for George and Mayan. You think they'd be interested in this? He goes, well, only way to find out is to pitch it to them. So when they pitched it to me, where you're owning up to your responsibility for the first time and you didn't talk for years, and then you're very hard on each other. And when we hung up, I said, I forgot to ask if it was animation, because I thought only if you're painted yellow could you talk to somebody else like this. This isn't a show where I don't think humans would say this to each other. I mean, they're much more comfortable on Family Guy and American Dad and South Park, that was going to be the dialogue. But no, it was us. And it's funny because the same things are still there. We did the pilot, then you're waiting to see if the pilot got picked up. And then we've done the 13 episodes. And then tomorrow, December 2nd, we'll know whether we're going to continue, but everybody feels like they're going to continue. And there's things for me to do at NBC. But I told Fred Silverman in the elevator in the early 2000s that my dream job was to have a sitcom at NBC. And he said, maybe one day you will, George.
Wow. Yours is a great story, Vato.
Chico and the Man.
It really is.
I'm in the Sanford and Son time spot.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, Rick, I've manifested things that could have only been manifested and not ever been, I thought, would have ever happened in the real world.
Wow. Sometimes you pinch yourself and wonder if there isn't some other force out there in the universe that's making all these things happen, right?
I don't have the same problems I had growing up. I have a Range Rover with very high performance tires, and I was driving to a house that I have, and there was a spike in it, and I could have blown out. I mean, I spent 2 hours on the freeway. I could have blown out. So I bought a BMW X7 because I needed a car that had more durable tires. I mean, it's nothing like it's nothing like the way I was growing up.
Yeah, I think back to all the times I could have bit it. Plenty.
It got my attention because I was driving pretty fast, and those tires are nothing. And
when did that happen? When did that happen?
This last over Thanksgiving, and no. I really felt like I dodged a bullet there. I wasn't about to let it happen again, so I got another car that I could drive.
Wow,
more consistent.
Well, a message, a signal. Somebody telling you, be careful. Don't take shit for granted.
There was a white bat flying in the house over there. Never seen a light color bat. Flew into the only flew into the two rooms that I was in, and they weren't not close to each other. And, the mensaje from the bat is to believe what I feel and to believe what I think I see, because it's true.
Trust. Yeah, exactly. Bueno,
and again, it wasn't a human being that told me it was a fucking white bat.
I didn't even know white bats existed, man. It's like,
I didn't know either. I could see a skeletal frame. I was like, what? But he flew in a motion. He didn't flew like any of the dark bats. He flew beautiful, just, almost touching his wings and flew across in circles in those two rooms. And I'm like, I don't know what this is, but whatever he's got to say, I'm listening to.
I'm going to be looking for white bats from now on. George Lopez, we stand on your shoulders, my friend, for all that you have done. You are, I know, like me, you don't wear your Latino-ness on your shoulders or anything, pero at the same time, there are a lot of people who will find pride in your story and will be inspired by what you've done, and man, where that all came from. The stories you tell about when you were growing up with your grandmother and things that weren't so good in your life. And somehow you've been able to manifest all that into one heck of a great story. I mean, it's just really fun, man. It's fun knowing you. It's fun talking to you.
Yeah, I have a great, I always respond really well to you, man. So thank you.
Gracias,
I have a lot of respect for you. I have a lot of respect for you as well.
Thank you, George. You're a good man. We appreciate it. Thanks again. George Lopez, the one and only. How about it, huh? How about it? Well, this is the Rick Sanchez podcast. We're a part of Agua Media. Of course, we're all over the place. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you happen to be watching this on the old YouTube-y thing, make sure you subscribe. Dale. Vamos con todo. Y hasta la próxima.
Agua